Welcome to our second episode of Courageous Healing. I'm the producer and host, Victor Escalante. Joining me is Adele George. Adele, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you? Happy to be
Uh,
here.
I'm great. This month is October, which is the month of domestic violence.
Yes. It's about the domestic violence awareness, and I think it's an important conversation to have.
Absolutely. So, Adele, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Okay, so as a domestic violence survivor, I'm extremely passionate about talking about this subject. And in fact, any sort of family trauma, sexual assaults, anything like that. But in particular, because this is Domestic Violence Month and I am a domestic violence awareness advocate, we're going to talk about that this month. So one of the things that I want to talk about with domestic violence is growing up, I didn't know what that was. I didn't come from a really significant background of family violence. That wasn't a thing. My friends were not being subjected to family violence, and no one really talked about any sort of, oh my God, like that was stuff that was either looked the other way or we just didn't know it was happening. And as a matter of fact, any sort of abuse that I was made aware of came from one of those little VHS tapes that you watched in PE, where little Billy came to school with some bruises because his daddy had punched him around, and that we were supposed to go and tell the teacher, little Billy looks like his dad might be beating up on him or something like that. We were not, and which is not quite exactly the way the world works in most cases. So it's just I want I want to bring light to this subject because no one talks about it. I go on Facebook and I'll post something about domestic violence and nobody comments, nobody reads it. I post a picture of my dog and everybody likes it.
Yes.
So it's an uncomfortable subject.
Sure.
People don't like to look ugly things in the face. So I want people to be more comfortable with it. I want people to not only be able to talk about it amongst themselves, I want them to be able to talk to someone else that they think might be being in an abusive situation. I want people to actually be comfortable saying, "Are you being abused?" Or to come to you and say, "I'm being abused and I need help." We have to make it an easier subject to talk about. Don't turn your head the other way. This is no longer a taboo subject. It hasn't been for an extremely long time, but we see it on TV and we see it in the movies, but nobody is really still talking about it. The woman will get abused and then she'll go someplace else and marry the man of her life. There's so much more than what you see in the movies and what you see in television. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to do a few things. One, make light of this situation, save lives, and help you find the healing.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and shine the light on this topic, Adele. And I want you to give us your commentary.
The effects of domestic violence are long lasting. I have a statistic here that says 41% of survivors reported that they still are working towards feeling free. It's a terrifying thing to be in a domestic violence situation and to be in a situation where you feel like you have absolutely no freedom.
Sure. And so, one explanation, this is not the only explanation, but one factor could be the fact that you suffer from PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder syndrome, which, which is a lifelong programming because it's at emotional, neurological level. When a survivor of physical abuse goes through, all it takes is one time, because the brain learns quickly. In the field of NLP, which I have a postmaster's certification, we call it a one-time learning experience when someone has a phobic response, which PTSD is a form of a phobic response because your mind, your emotions are triggered when something happens with your spouse or in the environment to where you go into hypervigilance. And so that's why victims seldom feel that they're free, because they don't have that sense of being okay and safe in any kind of environment.
Oh, absolutely. And let's even talk about the fact that there's not a lot of places for victims to go to feel safe. I mean, just in Louisiana alone in 2023, there were 2,144 unmet needs. They could not, there, that means the shelters were full and they could not take them in. I mean, the lack of domestic violence shelter beds is a problem, for places for people to go to get 2 to 3 hours away from where they live to find some safety, to get a moment to pull themselves together. I mean, it's important that, and then in probably in Texas as much as it is in Louisiana, because we have so many rural areas, that the closest shelters are not close. They're hours away.
Yeah. So what do you do in a case like that? Where can you go to a safe space to where you feel that you're not going to be beaten, that you're
Right.
not going to continue to be harassed by your significant other or whoever you're in a relationship with, that
Right.
that would turn to violence or turn to abuse?
Exactly. And that brings up really one of the points that I wanted to talk about today. Anyway, one of the first things that I talk about with people when they're either in abusive situations, or people come to me and say, my cousin, sister, aunt, uncle, brother is in a domestic violence situation. What do we do? The first thing is start a plan.
Yes.
Just start figuring out and coming up with a plan. And that plan has to be, how do you manipulate yourself out of the door? When do you do it? How do you do it? That type of thing. So that's a really good point. So the first thing to do is to come up with a plan, because you need to know where's the shelter. How am I going to get there if I don't have a vehicle? Or if I do have a vehicle, does my vehicle have a tracking device on it? And if your vehicle has a tracking device on it, I have been told, I have not verified this. Victor, at some point, we definitely need to make some phone calls to verify this,
Yes.
that body shops, police departments, and sometimes private investigators will have devices that will allow you to be able to scan your vehicle to see if you have any sort of tracking device. Now, I will say this. I did go look on Amazon. They're not very expensive, these devices. I think they're between like 90 and $100. If someone can afford to buy one to scan your car for you, you can find out if there's a tracking device. So first things first, you got to get rid of anything that you would be that's trackable, such as
Including your phone. Your
credit cards.
because you can be tracked by a phone.
You cannot use credit cards and you cannot use your phone. So you need
Yes.
a burner phone and you need cash only. And if you need a credit card, just go to Walmart and get one of those Visa cards
Mhm.
that you can put money on and use if you have to pay for a hotel room or something like that.
Yeah. And
You
they're
know,
reloadable, by the way, some of those cards.
yeah,
And
make sure you get one that is reloadable,
yeah.
or you have a separate account set up somewhere that no one has access to. But the safest thing to do would be to get rid of all your credit cards, get rid of your cell phone and any sort of devices that are trackable. Because nowadays there's so many people that can put things on your phone that's not Life 360. So you don't know if there's a program that's actually operating in the background of your phone, and they're very difficult to detect, and they're very difficult to get rid of. So you need a burner phone. You just need a phone that you can load up with minutes so you can contact the people that you need to contact, and you can let people know that you're safe, and or so that you can use it to reach out to the shelters, and you can contact so that you can make phone calls to people, or the person who's being abused can make phone calls to the people that can help them, so that they're not, again, anything you need to do that's not going to be able to, you can't get tracked. So it's really important. Step one is coming up with a plan. And a person who's in an abusive situation is often not going to have a clear-headed perspective. So hopefully they have a friend like you listener here today that can help them come up with the plan or to devise the plan for them, because they're in such a place where coming up with a plan is not necessarily that easy. So for them, because they can't see past the four walls of where they are.
They don't know what the first step is. And,
Yes.
and so this is where we're here to give you the first step. The first step is coming up with a plan.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Yes. And Victor and I have a famous quote of what you don't know, what you don't know. And
Exactly.
one of those situations, some homework has to be done. Reach out to the National Domestic Violence Center, reach out to your local state's domestic violence coalition. You can get so many resources and so much information. You pick up the phone, call the 1-800 number and say, I have a friend who's in an abusive situation. I'm trying to help them. And many times you'll get a person on the other end of the phone who says the closest shelter is going to be here, this, that, and the other. Now, you cannot make the phone call. You can make the phone call to the shelter, but your friend actually has to do the follow through. So if you do all the research or you do all the things for them to get there, they still have to do it. But they can do it if they feel safe and if they feel encouraged. But I
Yes.
mean, know that the fear of leaving an abuser, because I've been there, we fear of leaving an abuser is death. You're afraid that you're going to lose your life in the process. You're afraid that some significant harm is going to come in some way, shape, or form. So that's why the plan is so important.
I want to talk about the act of taking that next step, Adele, because at that point you own up that this is your problem. This is something that you need to deal with. This is no longer something that is being done to you. This is something that now you're taking ownership. And that is why it is so critical for you to take that next step of calling the shelter, becoming a proactive and an activist for yourself. You need to remember that no one will ever take better care of you than you. No one, not a family member, not a spouse, not a boss, no one will ever take better care of you than you. And that is why you have to be proactive, because when people that you are led to, when they see that you're taking ownership, that gives them the necessary information to know that you're going to take things to heart that they share with you, and they're going to provide you with everything that you need. But you got to take ownership. Without ownership, nothing is going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sometimes, Adele, people think about it and they think about it for years, and years go by and over a decade, and they're still thinking about it. There was a study that was done right here at the University of Houston, and I read this study when I was still working in the corrections department in El Paso, because there's a direct correlation to a previous study that was done with people that are faced with terminal illness, and the study suggested that there's 5 steps to permanent change, life sustaining permanent change. The first step is denial. That's when you are making all kinds of justifications, all kinds of excuses, blaming yourself for being a victim, because you've been told, of course, by the victimizer that you're to blame. So when you stay stuck in that first step, nothing is going to change. That's denial. And so denial leads to thinking about taking action. Doesn't mean that you will, but you're thinking about it because you're open to it. Your mind is at a different place other than denial, and now you're thinking about it, and you're open now to start looking at videos. I mean, think about the world that we live in, Adele, compared to when you were a victim. It's like information is readily available to you in your smartphone, right at your fingertips. TikTok videos, YouTube videos, articles, blog posts. It's like you can even get a therapist on your smartphone to be able to get some help. So we live in a totally different digital world to where help is just there for you at your fingertips, but you have to be proactive. You have to take ownership. So after thinking comes the actual step of taking action. Action. You read an article. You begin to consume articles, videos. You talk to other people, and that you find out that other people that you may work with, they also are survivors of abuse, because the statistics are incredible. Just to give you some idea what we're talking about. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience either physical violence, rape, or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Think about that. Victims are commonly abused by those who are closer to them. That's just that's just crazy, Adele. Uh, what's your take on that?
It is. So I've said this before when I put something on Facebook is look at the number of friends that you have on Facebook. Just however many, what your number of friends are that you're friends with on Facebook. 1 in 4.
Yeah.
1 in 4 of your friends in that list are being abused. And so, and when you sit down and you're like, no, that can't be, not my friends list, not my friends list. I assure you, people hide it well. People hide abuse well. So it's not something that's easily recognized. And because abuse doesn't, look, bruises can be hidden and bruises aren't always seen. But I can tell you now, it's easy to hide. It's easy to go. I mean, my ex and I used to hang out with my friends, and nobody knew. Nobody knew that he was abusive to me because we just appeared like we were just these happily married newlyweds living our best life.
Yeah, you put on the mask of happiness and normality, whatever that is,
Right.
and you pretend like you don't have a problem.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, that's something else that, that's ingrained in all of us is to act like there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
That's something that that we really do need to acknowledge when there's a problem. But, it's a lot deeper than what you think. And over and over, and every time I tell my story, another friend comes and tells me I was in an abusive relationship. And so, and what happens is they try to downplay it based off of what I've been through because mine was so tragic. However, I often remind them this isn't that competition. I'm not,
Yeah.
you're not competing with me for the worst story here. We're all on the same page. It doesn't matter if it's just your spouse or a parent or a friend or a loved one yelling at you day in and day out. That's abuse.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's abuse. It does. If that is just as significant as what I went through, and I want to reiterate, abuse does not mean that you actually sustain physical abuse.
I want to ask you a question, Adele. Did you ever place a call to one of those domestic violence hotlines?
I did not. No, I did not.
Okay. Listen to this statistic. Each day in the United States, over 20,000 calls are placed to domestic violence hotlines by individuals reporting incidents. On average, 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner. And this is an astounding number that shows just how pervasive this is in our society. A weapon is used 19% of domestic violence incidents. Women who are victims of intimate partner violence are most likely to be between the ages of 18 and 24. Basically, little girls that are just coming into age of womanhood that are going to go through some kind of domestic violence. And that at that age, again, you're not mature. you're not assertive in order to take that necessary step to talk to somebody. Seek professional help. There is so much stigma, and because, especially if you're newlywed or if you are new in a relationship, you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to make waves within your family or your spouse's family. You don't want your dirty laundry to be aired out in your community. And of course, that's how it starts.
Yeah.
Just give us a little bit of your story, Adele, as far as how you pretended like it was normal and how you didn't want it to get out.
Well, I just want to piggyback on your statistics for a second. Did you know that during Super Bowl Sunday, the domestic violence calls increased by 156%?
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Calls to law enforcement, calls to law
Wow.
enforcement increased significantly during the Super Bowl.
When I
And
worked in the criminal justice system, I remember this saying that I had. Look, you guys got drunk and high because your team lost. Okay, one half. You guys got drunk and high because your team won. Okay, it doesn't matter. People who
I've
have,
heard it's even worse during the World Cup
oh, I bet, because
because it's a global statistic at that
yeah,
point.
it's a
This
global thing. So yeah, makes sense.
Yes. So so it was really easy for me to pretend like nothing was going on when I was around friends and family, because it took me a while to realize that the relationship that I had wasn't normal. You know, I grew up in a small town. And when you grow up in a small town, one of the things you do shortly after you graduate high school is get married. And so while I didn't marry my high school sweetheart, I married the person that I met after high school. And, you know, within a few years of graduating, we were married, and it was the thing that you did. And I never assessed whether his behavior was healthy, mentally capable. You know, I never really I didn't know to understand someone's mental health. So in like anything, when people are in a relationship like that, it's a gradual progression. You don't
Sure,
typically walk into an abusive relationship.
sure.
It takes some time.
With
But
in this day and age, Adele, imagine telling your prospective partner, "Show me your credit report and show me your medical records."
right. Your mental health. When was the last time you had a mental? You went and saw a psychologist.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
What have you been in treatment for?
Well, you know, I mean, I say it's an in thing. You know, going to therapy is an in thing, and I think it's a big
In
deal.
this day and age, yes, it has become acceptable. But in the day and age that you and I grew up in, it was taboo,
It's
and with
movement.
and in small towns, it's still taboo. And
Yeah.
among Latinos, it's taboo for you to go to a therapist because they think you develop a stigma of being crazy. Okay, that's just the way the culture is.
It's especially for men.
Yes.
But it's even worse for men than it is for women. Can go.
Yes.
Women can go to therapy all day, every day.
Hmm.
You know, but I just I didn't know what to do with the life I had, so I just hid it. You know, I didn't it didn't reflect outside of my house. Nobody knew what was going on. I didn't really understand what was going on. And so I just, you know, when we were out, we were a normal happy couple to everybody else. And because of that, I I mean, really, like, everybody people tell me to this day that when they see me, I had no clue. I mean, when we went out to dinner, you would have, like, blown my head off if you would have told me that with a feather, if you would have told me that he was the man sitting at the table with us was capable of the violence that he committed.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's true. I mean, if there's no visible signs, it's very easy to just keep it a secret. And you want to look, let me tell you something. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating to sit there and all of a sudden say, holy crap, what have I gotten myself into? And really, really realize this is not good. And this is something I have to get out of. And when you realize that, you it's almost admitting like you lost.
Yes, there's a level of pain associated with being brutally honest with yourself to realize that that fantasy, that dream that you had of living happily ever after was all just fiction. That
Yeah.
you made a big mistake, and that you can never go back because of the stigma and the shame and the everything else that is associated with a failed relationship.
Yeah. And then the first thought, pardon my French, the first thought was, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah,
I literally sat down. When I sat down and realized this is not a normal marriage. This is not a normal relationship. And this was at a time when this wasn't actually, this was when we were still on the up part. We were about right here. We hadn't, hit peak. And so, when I was like, okay, now I need to sit down and I need to gather my bearings. And I don't know what in me realized that at that time that I needed to make a plan, but I really started to observe my world. I really started to observe my world from a different lens, and I checked out. I mentally checked out of the relationship in a way where it became, I was looking at it from almost like the outside looking in.
yeah, that's a dissociative state, Adele, that people tend to go into when it's too hard to face reality, and when there is emotional and physical pain. We tend to disassociate. Our mind can travel places. We know that wherever our mind goes, there you are. Okay, so it's like, just listeners, think about being somewhere else other than where you are right now, and imagine it so vividly that you can see everything that is there. Well, guess what? That's where you are. Okay, you're not in your body. You're wherever your mind is, and that's a very typical pattern of abuse survivors and in trauma survivors.
Well, but the thing that would happen for me, and I don't know if this is for everybody, but for me, it worked to my advantage.
Sure, sure. It's a coping mechanism. Remember, it's an adaptive coping mechanism. What are the alternatives? Stay totally grounded in your mind and body, and
Well,
and feel all the avalanche of emotions.
the disassociative perspective gave me the ability to come up with a plan. It gave me
Sure,
the ability
sure,
to understand how to work and handle him.
sure.
And, I was fortunate that I could see how I could start to manipulate him.
Sure.
I could see how I could, in order to
I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Adele
prepare
and
myself.
listeners. I'm going to create a meditation for you to really, really understand dissociation in a positive way. Just like you can dissociate in a negative way, you can dissociate in a positive way, which is contemplative state, which is what Adele is describing, to where you step outside yourself and you take an objective look at that person, you in that relationship, and realize that there's options. There's options. That person doesn't have to stay at the side of that abuser. That and that's when, like I was talking about that U of A study, that's when you now are taking action. That's when you are now being proactive, and you, by golly, you're going to find ways. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, finishing up, just wrapping up, kind of talking about the steps and things that you can do to help people. Meanwhile, if you know someone, or if you are someone in an abusive situation, start to put a plan together. Just start to look at your options, figure out, talk to your local shelters. Most shelters on their websites have a little button. So if you're on the website and then your significant other or your abuser comes in, you can hit the button. It takes you like immediately to like the weather page. That so you don't have to worry about being on the website and not being able to get away fast.
Yeah.
Other thing is that either, have a bag with some clothes, with some cash, with a burner phone. Make sure that you have that bag stored at a friend's house. If you have a friend, if you're the friend of someone who's being abused, put that bag together for them and keep it at your house. And when they're ready to leave, you have a designated space away from your home and away from their home that you meet up to give them this bag. And make sure it has everything they need for at least a week. We're talking about diapers and formula if necessary. We're talking about clothes and toiletries, anything that they would need for an extended period of time. So some cash, a burner phone, and then the duffel bag. And give them that at a designated space, because the thing is that you don't want that person coming to your house, because then that can bring the abuser to your house, especially if there is if there's a tracking device.
Yes.
And I know it's hard because we all have things on our cell phones and photos on our cell phones. Find a way to upload them to the cloud so that you can still keep your phone, your pictures. But please get rid of your phone. Smash it. Because the thing is that if there's something on there that's following you, you are still in trouble. Don't use your credit cards. No credit cards, because again, that's something that can be tracked. Anything like that can be tracked you from point A to point B, especially if you're in a situation where your shelter is not nearby. And it's also recommended that you go to a shelter that's 2 to 3 hours away from where you are so that you can get to a safe space. If you're local and you go to a local shelter and that person actually knows where the shelters are or can find out, because all shelters are hidden, by the way. They're not publicized where they are. Those shelters, if they happen to know where it is or find it or can track you to where it is, that can be dangerous for everyone there. So the point is safety. In this plan, you build in a ton of safety. You go find out if you got a tracking device on your car. Don't remove it till you leave. Don't remove it until you leave. And go throw it somewhere where maybe, I don't know, throw it in a body of water if there's a river near you so that it looks like it's moving down a river. Throw it someplace where it's in the opposite direction of where you're going.
Yeah.
Get rid of it. Things like that. Don't really, and don't, when you do it, move quickly, move swiftly, and don't hesitate, because any hesitation can obviously cause you some trouble. So
that's not the time to second guess your decision. You made the decision. Now keep walking forward.
Right. And know that there's, and that burner phone is going to be your lifeline to the people that care about you.
Yes.
But most importantly, get where you need to go and then figure out next steps once you get there, because the shelters will have the resources or know the resources that you need in order to make the next steps to get you to safety.
Yes. Excellent advice, Adele. Is that enough show?
I think so.
Be sure and share the show with others. Comment, like, and leave us a 5-star review, because we plan on making this podcast a beacon of hope for abuse survivors.
Yeah. And if you want to keep up with things, you can go to our website and you can enter in your email address, and Victor will be happy to send you the meditation, and we will add you to our email list. So as we start sending emails out to update people on what's going on, you will be able to access what you need.
Awesome. Until next time, friends, go out and have a great week.